Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ross Farrugia, who is going to talk about Pharmaverse, breaking boundaries through open source collaboration. So Ross is the data engineering product family lead within the data science group at Roche Genentech. He has passion for transformative ways of working in order to help better meet the needs of patients, including driving greater cross-pharma alignment and collaboration. Today, he's talking on behalf of the Pharmaverse, for which he's one of the council representatives. So, Ross, take it away.
Thank you, Villa. Okay, hopefully you can all see my slides. So firstly, I'd just like to thank the RN Pharma Conference for having me here today to present on behalf of Pharmaverse. The title of the talk is Breaking Boundaries Through Open Source Collaboration. As Vola just introduced me, I'm Ross Farrugia. I'm the Data Engineering Product Family Lead at Roche and Genentech. So why, you ask, do I start with a photo of myself as a child? It's not just to show you that I once did have hair. Really, I did. No, it's because I'm asking all of the audience today to start off by trying to invoke a childlike mindset. When we were young, nothing seemed impossible. We were able to dream big and think blue sky. But then as we get older, naturally we get more skeptical. But some of the ideas, some of the themes of today's talk are definitely going to need that blue sky thinking. So please try to invoke a childlike mindset. Also, when I was young, I didn't do anything on my own. I always had my friends with me and we all had each other's back. And this is very much Pharmaverse. It's not about any individual, it's a collective. Here's a couple of the friends that have helped me along the way. On the left, there's Mike Stackhouse from Atorus, and on the right is Michael Rimler from GSK. Believe it or not, they're not actually brothers, even though these photos really look like they are related. I assure you they're not. And before I get going, I also want to ask for a little bit of audience participation, just to get some energy going, make sure everybody's awake. So I'm going to ask one question, and I would like you to try to answer that in the comment box. I will look through the answers later, and I really want to see some funny replies, because if you're really invoking a childlike mindset, you're going to put some jokes in there, and we'll all have a laugh along the way. So the question is, what separates humans from the rest of the animal kingdom? Why do we rule the world? So I'll repeat that again. The question is, what separates humans from the rest of the animal kingdom? Why do we rule the world? I'll give you a second, put some answers in the chat, put some comments, keep going throughout my presentation. It'll be funny to look back at all the replies, but I'm going to move to why I believe this is. So here's a quote from a very famous book. I'll give you a few moments for you to read through this quote. There's a line here in the middle where it says, sapiens can cooperate in extremely flexible ways with countless numbers of strangers. For me, the answer to that past question is collaboration. The way that we're able to work together across the world, across geography, across different companies, I think for me, that's why humans really rule the world. But when I first read this book, I had to take a step back and I had this depressing moment where I thought to myself, wait a minute, Ross, you've been in the industry 15 plus years and you've spent the majority of those years acting like an ant. I've spent so long diligently protecting my own ant colony, collecting leaves. Whenever I hit a challenge, I would speak to the other ants within my colony, and I'd always rely on their insights, their solutions. Sure, now and then I became a bit more like a chimpanzee. I started to kind of work at conferences, meeting other people, but usually they were former colleagues, i.e. people that used to be at my ant colony and went on to another colony. And generally we'd offer each other advice, best practices. This is how I do it at my company. But we'd stop us going as far as jumping in together and collaboratively working on a solution together that we could both reuse and all the rest of the industry could also reuse. But I'm glad to say over the last couple of years, I've met a lot of sapiens in the industry, people that really are getting me to think bigger and think across all of the industry's benefit. And this is what I'll talk to you about today. Okay, so industry collaboration is nothing new. We've all worked in working groups, we've all authored white papers, we've all shared best practices, shared presentations, shared papers. But what we're talking about here is collaborative development of actual code bases and sharing actual reusable solutions that can be used by other companies. And the scope of Pharmaverse is clinical reporting. What we mean there is going from CRF through to submission. And when you think about that, if you think about the full pipeline of getting a drug to market, it's actually massive. And even though it's a really challenging part of it to do clinical reporting, we're just a small part of a very large chain. And when you actually think about our area of focus here in clinical reporting, it's after the treatments have been developed, found, identified. We're just producing the results. The actual magic has already happened in finding the molecule, finding the treatment that's going to help patients. So our piece of the work could be considered as post-competitive. And if you look in our industry now that we have such great standards via efforts such as CDISC, it means that we're all facing increasingly similar, if not the same, challenge. So when you look at the problem statements through these lenses, you start to realize that actually each company have got so much more to gain rather than losing through industry collaboration around open source. Just a few areas I can reel off. Firstly, sharing the development and maintenance of solutions. That's huge. At the moment, every company is making their siloed solutions that they have to spend resource to develop and then ultimately maintain. If we can share that out a little bit evenly across the industry and develop solutions we all can use, that's a massive saving. Also, imagine the impact to regulators. Imagine if we're able to more unify submissions. Imagine if health authorities are seeing things from different sponsor companies, but they're looking the same every time. Health authorities don't want us all to submit in totally different ways. And then finally, imagine the impact to the next generation of talents. People that are looking at our industry thinking of, wow, would I like to go into that industry for employment? If they see us collaborating, they see us prioritizing patients and healthcare, it's going to be much more attractive to come into this industry. And even it gives them pathways. They can start to get involved in open source, make contributions to code, show us their talent, and that might even result in recruitment opportunities for them. So I'm going to ask another question. You don't have to answer this question in the comments, but it might make for funny reading for me later if you do. Thinking about what I've just said, how I've just set the scene, what do you want to be in the industry? An ant, a chimpanzee, or a sapien? Okay, so let's move on to what is Pharmaverse and how did it originate? So Pharmaverse was an idea dreamt up by Michael and Mike, who I shared in the earlier slide. And they had this vision of, could we make a curated open source suite of end-to-end packages in R that enable all the clinical reporting, data flow and pipeline? One of the reasons that they wanted to do this is when companies come to adopt R, they generally go towards CRAN and they're faced with like 20,000 packages. That's stifling, it's overwhelming, and it's enough to put a company off even looking at taking R seriously. So we're thinking for pharmaceutical companies, could we make it a little bit a lower bar of adoption? The other thing that they started looking at is they started to look, are there any pharmaceutical specific gaps? Anything that in our industry we'd really benefit from something new that's not already out there? So GSK and Atorus started to collaborate on certain R packages, some co-developments. One example is LogRx. There they were looking at, can we make R code more traceable so it can stand up to the tests of the stringent level of audits we face in the pharmaceutical industry? Myself and Samesh from J&J, Janssen, got involved. We had similar passion to open source and to see the industry come together to collaborate. And what we did is we started looking across what was already available. I was pleased to see that a lot of companies were already putting things out to open source. There wasn't as often companies just doing things in siloed solutions like they did with other programming languages in the past. I was really happy to see that. But what we did notice is there was already a growing proliferation of packages trying to solve the same challenge. We were already getting a duplication. We didn't want Pharmaverse to end up being 10,000 packages and you have to kind of choose between them. We wanted to make this a bit more opinionated. And where companies were trying to solve a challenge, maybe they could just do it together and take the best of each package and solve it once and solve it well. So when we started to assess all of the packages, we made a website. This is called pharmaverse.org. This is available to everybody. You can have a look there, and all our recommended packages are available there. We've categorized them under tasks which will be familiar for anyone that's used to clinical reporting. So things like SCTM, ADAM, tables, listings, graphs. Here's the eSub page showing a couple of packages available. One is Exporter, which is a GSK and Atorus collaboration around creating transport files for eSubmission. PackageLite came from Merck, where it looks at how can you create readable code for FDA submissions, for example, out of R packages. At this stage, though, I really want to make clear that Pharmaverse is not a consortium. We don't own, fund, or maintain all of these packages. Some of the individuals involved are package maintainers, package funders, some of the companies involved are, but we ourselves do not take ownership of these packages. We let people make those choices themselves, the developers. We give a minimal set of inclusion criteria, things like we want the licenses to be permissive, but we're not taking ownership or decision-making across all of these packages. That remains with the package development teams themselves. And an example of that is our GitHub organization. We've got a Pharmaverse GitHub organization, which a lot of the packages you'll find housed there, but not all of them. Some packages predate Pharmaverse, and they're already stored in their own organizations, and that's fine. We're equally willing to link out to them. One thing that we have learned along the way, though, is by using a neutral home like Pharmaverse, it can make your package more appealing to community contributions. If I put everything under a package like an organization called Roche, for example, it's less likely that people outside of Roche are going to want to give their code to that naturally. Also, I should say that it's never envisaged that all companies have to use all these packages. We just want to give a more palatable starting point than looking across all of CRAN. Companies are free then to choose whichever packages, either from Pharmaverse or outside of Pharmaverse, that they like, which will fit into their own existing workflows and frameworks. After all, no two ant colonies are ever identical. We accept that. The other thing when I start to talk about company approaches that I should call out right now, because it's an elephant in the room, and I'm sure it's probably already in the Q&A box, it's around validation. No, none of these packages can be considered as validated, because how could I sit here and say that any one of these packages will meet your company-specific criteria for what denotes validation? It's a company-specific strategy decision. What I can say is that all the packages are tested with great robustness, lots of unit testing, and very high code coverage scores. But it's ultimately up to companies to decide what denotes the term validation. And if you're interested in seeing one such company approach, check out the talk later on from two of my colleagues, Doug Kelkoff and Colleen Zabayos, who will be talking about the Roche strategy towards validation. And if you like it, by all means, please reuse. The other thing that we wanted to show in Pharmaverse is not just to raise up individual packages, but also to show how they can be used in conjunction so that the whole is a greater sum than the individual parts. For me, that's really the beauty of R and open source, is how you can use lots of different packages to solve your ultimate need and how they can work together to give you an end-to-end deliverable. So here, the example on screen, this is our sister website, which is available also via pharmaverse.org. It's linked from there. This sister site shows you how to create tasks end-to-end, such as an ADSL ADAM here. When we were developing Admiral, which is a package for ADAM derivations, I'll talk more about in a second, we got a lot of feedback saying, hey, it'd be really great if you could do some metadata-driven actions on the data set. And we kind of stepped back, looked at that, and we realized, actually, that's not Atom specific. That could just as easily be useful for SDTM as well. So Christina Fillmore from GSK stepped forward, and she led the development of meta tools. And now that can work nicely alongside Admiral to lift both packages up and deliver more for the users. For me, this is part of the great beauty of open source. No single development team, no single company has to shoulder all of the weight of development and maintenance if we share the burden across an industry as big as ours. The other thing I want to say about Pharmaverse is it's not just a list of packages. We're trying to build a community. We're trying to build a movement in the pharmaceutical industry. We've had years and years of us only working in company silos on our code bases. So now we're trying to really break those boundaries. This is our Slack community here. We've now got almost 500 people from 30 plus companies, and they're all joining this community because they're engaged in open source, and they believe that collectively we can do more for patients across all the world. The other great thing about this is it's a little less formal than raising GitHub issues. So if you want to start a discussion about a certain package, say you don't like something in logrx, for example, you can start a discussion where you can instantly get linked with the package developers and the people behind that package themselves. You can say, hey, why did you design it this way out of interest? And it's a little more personal than just raising a GitHub issue where you might just get somebody replying with, no, we're not going to update that, and closing your issue. You can start a bit more discussion. And now it starts to feel more like a community, because ultimately people are the heartbeat of this. It's people that are going to make this work ultimately across our industry. So with that slide in mind, I'm hoping people are starting to get excited and thinking, how could I be involved? What could I do for this movement in future? For a start, you can join the Slack community. I'll share that link after the talk, along with all the other links of things that I'm sharing today. But there are other ways you can contribute. If you go to our Pharmaverse.org website, you'll see a contribute section. And there's lots of ways you can get involved. Maybe you have a package that you want to raise up into the Pharmaverse, and one of our working groups will then review and make the call over whether to include it. Maybe you're an expert in a certain area like data engineering, for example, and you want to be part of one of our working groups. You want to help dictate what goes in Pharmaverse in future, maybe help to start new collaborations. Then you can apply to be part of our working groups. One thing we ask, though, is don't just do this to put it on your CV, your resume. Do it because you're really passionate about our vision. Don't come as a passenger. Come really offering your time and effort to help us to enhance this movement. Then the other way that you can think about it is maybe you're an individual contributor and you just want to dip your toe into open source. You just want to find a package that's looking for a contributor like you to help them. Well, here's a website which is maintained by a group called Open Pharma. This is linked from pharmaverse.org as well. But this package, this website, it actually looks across not just Pharmaverse packages, it looks across any open source packages which could be useful across pharmaceuticals. So this goes beyond clinical reporting, but you can also filter on only Pharmaverse packages if that's all you're interested in. But the idea of this website is it can help you to find packages which are looking for developers like you. So there's an open issues tab, and what that does is it scrapes across all the GitHub repos and it looks for where there's a label of good first issue or help wanted. And it's where the developers actively said, that'd be a great issue that somebody could help me with. Somebody new could come in and contribute to my package. So this connects you with people that are actively looking for skills like yours. And you can also filter and categorize, like maybe you're an eSub expert, so you can just look at only the eSub packages and focus your effort on there. But this is a way to kind of build the network, build the community, and link you with people that really need your help. And then to add a bit of fun, if you look in the bottom left corner, there's a leaderboard. This adds a bit of gamification. If you look at the overall ranking, you'll see BMS 63 at the top. That's Ben Straub from GSK. He's one of the leads in Admiral and a number of other packages as well. Good luck trying to knock Ben off the top of the leaderboard. This will be a bit of fun. Let's make this more a fun community that people want to be involved in and they want to give their time to. And I have to pay credit to Mathieu Casol, who developed most of this website. And I think he's done a really awesome job. Okay, so now that I've really introduced the Pharmaverse and how we operate, I want to go into giving some of the success stories and some of the learnings that we've had along the way. So one of the major success stories gets a lot of publicity is Admiral, which is our solution for Adam. The way that this started, it was actually by a chance LinkedIn connection. So Thomas Neitman put a post out. He's from Roche. He put a post out. And Michael Rimler from GSK commented and said, hey, we're thinking about the same challenge. Would you be interested in getting together and just discussing? So Thomas brought me in and we all had this discussion. We were amazed by how similar we were thinking. And we were facing exactly the same challenge. And we had really similar ideas about how we want to go about solving it. So together, we started to form a co-development between just Roche and GSK. As you can see in this slide, it's since grown to 7 companies. It actually has individual contributors from over 20 companies. So it's been a real rapid growth. People often ask, though, did you get any roadblocks at the start? What about when you said to leadership? What about when you said to your legal groups, you're going to be working with another company? What did they think? And we did have the discussion. Of course, we had to have those discussions. But the question we kept coming back, and maybe it helped by the fact that we started from scratch. So it wasn't like we had any code anyway, either company. But when we went to the legal groups, they often asked us, are you going to get benefit back for our company? Is our ant colony going to benefit from this as well as theirs? And it was a really easy question to answer. The answer was yes, of course. And not only us, but every company in the industry could benefit from this. Because after all, to start with, even if only Roche and GSK ever got behind this, we've already halved our development effort. But we believed that the vision was strong and we could get other companies and other individuals across the industry to get behind us. So we started to scope out a charter. We agreed to permissively license in the package. And we made a collaboration agreement. From that point, we took a kind of a radical step, maybe an over-optimistic step. We reached out to a group of industry programming heads. And we said, hey, we've got nothing at the moment, but we believe we've got a great idea. In 6 months' time, we believe we're going to have a foundational package. Would you be willing to put some resources forward to test that? Because ultimately, we don't want to deliver something that only ever Roche and GSK will find useful. We want to deliver something that could work for the whole industry. We expected maybe 1, 2, 3 companies will put their hand up. We were amazed when we got 20 companies put their hand up, and they put forward around 50 people that were willing to test. That's pretty scary when you know you've got nothing, and in 6 months' time, 50 people are going to be ready, waiting to test this. But it was so exciting. It gave us that impetus to kind of lift off this. So what we did was we got together, and from the start, we acted as one single team in the agile structure. We didn't represent our own ant colonies anymore. We became one joint colony, trying to act on the interest of the industry. In reality, we started to think like sapiens, not like ants anymore. We knew with Adam, though, that Adam is endless. It's infinite. You never will build a package that can do every single eventuality in Adam. So what we decided was, let's build a framework where we can focus on the 80%. We can build flexibility to cover the vast majority of needs. But where we see things that are very company specific and they're not relevant for the other companies, let's make a framework where the company can just make their own closed source package extension. And that's exactly what we did. So Admiral, for example, at Roche, we have an Admiral Roche, where it's just the final 10 or 20% of effort only for the Roche specifics. Anything that can be useful for others, we open source. So 6 months came and went in the blink of an eye, and we delivered the foundational package, and we got reams of feedback. Not all positive, I'll openly say, but that's part of the journey. And that was what helped us, because we didn't want to deliver anything that wouldn't be useful for the majority of companies. So it helped us to pivot, it helped us to revisit design decisions and actually make a better package now, which is more likely to get adopted by the whole industry. There was a really great piece of the feedback we got, which was we did a survey, and over 75% of the respondents said that they would advocate Admiral as their primary solution for ADAM within their companies. Bear in mind, those companies all had their own siloed solutions that probably many years of effort had been put into. Here's us with this little 6 month worth of effort from 2 companies. And it wasn't the package that made people believe. It was the vision of doing this collaboratively in the open source that people really believed this was the way to go. Many of those individuals then later became contributors, and they got involved with Admiral to help us make the enhancements that they were requesting. Since then, the package has grown from strength to strength. We started to look at therapeutic area efficacy package extensions. So we got Amgen involved for oncology, BMS then also recently joined for oncology, Novartis joined for ophthalmology. And one of the personal highlights for me was when Pfizer reached out and said, hey, we want to drive the vaccine package extension. And J&J, Janssen got involved as well. But the great thing about this is, for me, I was like, if ever there's a part of healthcare that I want to see industry companies coming together after the last few years we've all struggled through, surely it's vaccine development. So I was really proud to think, hey, if there is ever another pandemic in the future, hopefully not, but if it ever comes, imagine they're able to use Admiral vaccine so that all of those vaccines get to market even quicker, potentially. That was a really proud part of this. Every month we host Admiral meetings where they're onboarding sessions, so new contributors from across the world can join. The other month we had a session where 20 people joined from across 10 countries and 14 different companies. So it's really great to see how month on month the community keeps thriving and growing. And look out, in the new year, there's going to be a CDIS COSA hackathon on Admiral, which will give you an opportunity to get hands-on with the package. We believe that if we keep enhancing this package, we keep bringing the industry together like this will eventually become the Adam code version of Wikipedia. It will be powered by open source and ultimately by the wisdom of the crowd. We're trying to bring the experts who know those disease areas, know Adam development the most, make them the developers, and share it widely in a reusable way. Okay, moving on to another example. This is around Shiny. So companies often see Shiny as like a pathway into adopting R. It's something a bit new, a bit shiny by nature. So what companies generally do is they let their developers go, explore, learn R, and start to build apps. But then what you end up seeing is that a lot of programming effort gets made on actually not the analysis themselves, but building the module, building the app, building the dynamic settings. And each stakeholder then wants their own bespoke version of that app. So as shiny, as great as it can be a real resource drain. So many years ago at Roche, there was an initiative started called Teal, where Adrian Waddle, he's a Sapien, and many others like him, they saw the future and they were like, hey, this is going to grow and grow. Let's build a framework here where we can make this consistent and easy for anybody firstly across Roche, but later across the industry, to be able to create shiny apps on a similar framework. Since then, it's open source, and several other companies have started to collaborate with this now. And the other great thing is it's been tested on different tabulation packages. So it doesn't matter if you use rtables, Tplyr, some other tabulation package, this will be flexible, and you'll still be able to feed it into this this approach. One of the great things that they did, in my mind, was we often had stakeholders going through, dynamically exploring the data, and then finding something interesting and saying, I want that graph as a static report. I need it in a publication. I need it in a presentation. Give me that static code. And then generally what we'd have to go is go recreate the table or recreate the graph separately and do some kind of validation process. But it was a lot of kind of duplicative effort. With Teal, they created a simple button, which is the show R code button. So any visualization, any table you like, you can quickly turn it into a static report via finding the R code from that. So I'll show you that in a second. I promised a demo in the abstract, and this will be that demo. So let's dive in. So if you navigate to the pharmaverse.org website, under the end-to-end clinical reporting packages, under TLGs, you'll see these 3 example apps. So I'm going to open the efficacy one, but there's safety, there's exploratory as well. And if I just reload, what we do in Roche is we give these packages, these apps, out to consumers like clinical scientists, but we don't just throw it over the fence. We give them a bit of statistical education, because for a start, when you start to look into like subgroup analyses in efficacy, it can be very dangerous. You can go down rabbit holes, you can run the risk of multiplicity testing, and you can have a scientist getting really excited because they found the next great biomarker and things like that, when in reality, they're looking at like 5 patients or something silly, so it's never really going to be significant. So we really do educate that with this great power we give consumers, there comes great responsibility as well to use it wisely. But how it looks like, you've got like a variable browser where you can understand a bit more about your data. You've got tables where you can change the treatment groups, or you can add a filter. Let's say we only want to look at male patients, for example. You can easily dynamically change this. You can change the variables which are shown in the tabulation. And then you can go into efficacy sections, like a Kaplan-Meier plot, for example. We use this commonly in oncology. And if you don't want to look at overall survival, you can look at a different parameter, like progression-free survival. Say, you know, you really like that visualization. You think, wow, I really need to put this in a publication. You can go down to the Show R Code button, and this will generate code which can be copied to your clipboard, and you can run that in your R session to create a static version of that display. This has saved so much time at Roche. We used to get ad hoc analysis requests where they'd be like, hey, create this output, but create it 50 different times on all these different subgroups. They'd end up using maybe 1 or 2 of them. The rest would go in the bin. Now we can just dynamically visualize this and talk them through, show them subgroups, and then find which pieces do we really want to delve deeper into. And also, if we're there with them, we can remind them of some of that statistical kind of watch outs that I mentioned. Okay, my final example is a recent package that got added to Pharmaverse called Env Setup. So this came from Nick Maisel from J&J Janssen in collaboration with Atorus. And the idea of Env Setup is, if we're going to make multilingual programming really work in this industry, then we have to recognize that a lot of companies are currently embedded in SaaS-based workflows where there's a lot of things there where we only know at the moment how to do it in a SaaS-like way. So some examples would be things like libname statements, or trying to use macros from a global level, a higher level, or auto-exec process, for example. What Env Setup tries to do is not to repeat this, but to try to solve it in a more R-like way, so that companies can adopt R and SaaS side by side, but still maintain some of the overarching workflows which the users may be so familiar with and you know, difficult to let go of. So this is really trying to harmonize different languages so that both can be used to great effect in the industry. A question we often get is, why is Pharmaverse only looking at R? And the simple answer to that is, we didn't want to boil the ocean, because if you go too big too soon, you'll never in reality achieve anything. And we saw with R, this is the programming language that seems to have real industry momentum at the moment. And we see talent coming through that are already skilled in R. We see health authorities engaging with R, like the FDA via the R Consortium R Submissions Working Group. And I think Ning and colleagues from the FDA are going to be presenting on that later today. So we're not saying that for sure there will never be any other languages in Pharmaverse, but we see R as a really good starting point and a starting focus. And we'll be watching what happens with Python, Julia. I think it's just a really exciting space for the industry. The other thing, if anything you take from this presentation, is that it's not really about any language. It's about solving the problem together in unison, rather than each company selfishly doing their own thing and not really offering it out to the rest of the industry. That's the behavior we're trying to change. Language, yeah, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme. Okay, so one of my last slides. Imagine a few years from now, imagine we're in a world where every company, large and small, any charity, any academic group, they all can do end-to-end clinical reporting in a consistent way for free via the open source packages we put out there. Imagine the impact to regulators when they receive more consistent packages. For example, they're seeing Admiral used by many different sponsor companies. Naturally, they'll start to trust it more. The greater transparency from open source means that they're less likely to have questions like, how did you derive XYZ? Send me your code. They can go into GitHub and look themselves and see the code. Surely this is going to help to speed up approval times for all the industry and ultimately bring treatments to patient quicker, which is what we all want. Imagine the resource impact as well. If we're not all developing and maintaining our own solutions in silos anymore, imagine what kind of data science talent we could free up to make more use of our data, make some kind of new scientific insights, use some of these buzzwords like machine learning and artificial intelligence to actually put great value towards using our data to find the next breakthrough. If we can make clinical reporting and submissions less taxing, surely we can free up talent to these new areas. And finally, imagine if our regulatory pathways could be revolutionized. I talked about Shiny. Imagine if we can one day submit Shiny apps. Could we cut down on the level of paper-based submissions? It'll be a really exciting journey to see over the coming years. But most importantly, imagine that we achieve all of the above together as one pharmaceutical industry ecosystem, and we stop acting as ants and we start acting as sapiens. Okay, so this is the final slide. I will share this via the R in Pharma Slack, where you can see all of the links that I've mentioned. There's also a YouTube channel where you can see some demo videos of some of our packages. You can join our LinkedIn group to stay aware of the latest communications. But finally, I want to end on a light-hearted note. Anyone who knows me knows that that's my style. And I want to say, spare a thought for anybody that joined this presentation 10 or 15 minutes in. Spare a thought for them hearing me talk about ants and people as ants, ant colonies as companies. Those people must think, what a megalomaniac this guy is. Who does he think he is? So for any of you that are those people, please catch the YouTube recording of this at a later point when it's available. Watch the first 10 minutes, and I hope all will make sense. Also, you're going to see some very crazy comments in that chat of people that have been answering the earlier questions. But yeah, I'd just like to end by saying a big thank you. It's been a real pleasure. And thank you again to R in Pharma for having me and giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Ross. What a wonderful presentation. We all want the collaboration to happen across pharma, across code developers. So hopefully, Pharmaverse will empower some of that. And we hope to see you next year with doubling and tripling the numbers and a Slack engagement, a number of companies who participate. So good luck with Pharmaverse, and thank you for the wonderful presentation. We do have a couple of minutes for a couple of questions. So one of the questions was about the GitHub for some of the apps, which was already handled. But then we have another one around the performance of teal modules on an R-Connect server. So how is the connection? Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a question for the developers of that package. So this is where you can get into the Slack community and you can start to kind of directly interact with them. I know at Roche we use RS Connect and we use this package, but I have to say I'm not an expert in that. So this is where we can put the question to our Pharmaverse community, and people that develop that package will give you a better answer than me.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. And I have a question actually about the statistical education piece of your presentation. So when you give those modules to, for clients to use, how do you do the statistical education part? Is it like outside of the engagement of the app, or is that something that you guys develop within the app where, they can learn a necessary material?
Yeah, usually it's like a presentation to frame it. When we don't just throw it over the fence, we say, hey, look, this is what we're offering you. But because we're offering you this, you have to kind of engage with us and understand the risks of what we're offering. So it's very much like an upfront educational piece. The other thing that we quite commonly do at Roche is we sometimes do like sit downs with our consumer. So sit downs with some like non-technical kind of clinical scientists. And actually it can have great value both ways. It can help them to use the app in the right way, but it also can help you to understand their perspective more. So you start to learn more about the science of the molecule and the disease area. So that can be really beneficial as well.
Yeah, no, it totally works both ways for co-developers and scientists who are using it. So yeah, I'd like to hear it's working great for you as well. Thank you so much, Ross. I think we do not have any questions except for where we can find the slides.
So yeah, I will share them on the RM Pharma Slack, the conference Slack. And yeah, thank you everybody for your attention.